So today's video, I'm going to be resoldering the kill switch for a 9.5 Johnson outboard motor. It's a 1973. I've already done some other videos on actually getting the motor running. Trying to get this on my fishing boat, so when the snow and ice finally are gone, we can get out there and get fishing. So essentially, we have the old line, or old wiring here. You can see it's all frayed, corroded. It has two plugs that you can unplug to get it off the boat, and then you have to take this nut off of the actual kill switch end to physically get this all pulled out of the dash assembly. So I've already cut these wires. I've already stripped and prepped because I am going to solder new wire on here, and then I'm going to heat shrink over the top of the new wires after I get that soldered on. It's a temporary fix. We're still trying to get the motor running, make sure everything works. This will probably last a couple years until I can get something else on it, whether it's a factory switch or put one with an actual kill tether switch on it. So then what we're going to do, this end's already cut and prepped. I've cut two wires. They're a little bit longer than the stock assembly. I've already stripped the ends of the wires to get them ready to just put them on and get soldered. What I didn't do yet is I need to take the wire ends here, and I'm going to cut these about yay long, strip the insulation off, make it look the same as what the switch is, so I can solder directly onto this wiring, and then also heat shrink the tubing. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get these two prepped. So I got my side cutters, wire stripping tool. I don't know how much of this you guys will be able to see. I got some bad lighting here. The sun's going down fast. I don't have nice shop lights in my house. If I was back at the farm, it's a different story. Got a little more room to work. So I'm going to try and cut them both about the same length. One's a little bit longer than the other, so I got extra on those other wires, so snip that off. Now we're going to take our wire stripping tool. This is about 14 gauge wire, so you can see we got the insulation off of this piece now. This other one might be a little bit tougher just because it's not frayed off at the plug. We're going to go around with the wire snipping tool, pull that out. So now we've got both of them prepped. They're a little corroded. I'm going to see if I got a wire brush in my toolbox to brush these off. So it turns out I only got this huge wire brush here. I don't have a nice small toothbrush one in my toolbox, but I'm going to do the best I can with this just to get the heavy green corrosion off. Anything's better than nothing. So that one shined up a little bit. The other ones I did with a toothbrush wire brush at work before I left today. I got those nice and shiny on the actual kill switch. So that's probably about the best we're going to be able to get those. And we're going to go ahead and try and make the wire connections to get soldering. So I do have some old flux here to rub on the wires, soldering wire, soldering gun that's been heating up. Got my first wire attached to the kill switch. Wires are kind of twisted together. I got some flux on there. Now I have not soldered anything for quite a few years, so if things don't go on here the best, it's because I'm not very good at what I'm doing, but it's been a long time. So I'm going to go ahead and heat this up. Did end up with a little bubble down there at the bottom, but soldering iron, the tip is not the hottest on this one, but you can see that all that solder is sucked right in. So we're going to go ahead. Looks like a pretty good connection. So I'm going to go ahead and get this other wire on here as soon as that one cools down enough to work around it. Well, it cooled down enough to get the second wires twisted on. Don't have flux on them yet. I'm just kind of dabbing my finger in the flux. And I'm going to go ahead and just rub that on there. Retwist some of this a little bit. Actually, probably tighten this twist up here a little bit more. I don't like how exposed it was. So now same thing, wipe the flux off my fingers. We're going to go ahead, get the soldering iron back over here. Yeah, once those wires get nice and hot from the soldering iron, that solder just soaks right in. Alright, we're going to let that one cool. Now we'll get the shrink wrap cut and get it on there. My replacement wire I bought was 14 gauge. So you can see this shrink tube starts here, runs right up to the plastic. This one's a little shorter, runs right up to the plastic. In theory, I could have probably just cut that stick in half and had the same length on both sides, but I wasn't going to cut the little bit off of this one and just throw it in the garbage. It'll help this out over time and hold everything in place. So now I'm going to heat shrink this. Probably won't be the best video of that, but we'll see what we can do here. So I did forget the heat gun, so we're going to use the old handy dandy lighter. So what we're going to do is run that lighter up and down that heat shrink tube, and you'll see it start shrinking. Kind of rotate it, get different edges. As that starts to shrink, you should start seeing glue push out at both ends. So this one's shrinking really nicely. A little bit more on the plastic end there. But you can see, hopefully in that, it took the shape of the wiring where I just soldered. Should hold everything in place nicely. Nice and tight. So we're going to do that same thing over here on the other side. I'll go ahead and flip that one over. Come in from underneath. Kind of just wave that lighter up and down. You'll see some black smoke coming off initially, then it kind of goes away, but you don't want to hold it in one spot and overcook anything. It's a lot easier with a heat gun, but if you don't have one, you can make do with a lighter. Just get closer here, didn't shrink all the way. So that's the kill switch side. Now this other side, you still have this metal retaining nut that's on here. So you have to accommodate these plugs, still have to get back through that nut when you reassemble this if you don't put this through the dashboard on the outboard motor, and then put the nut back on and tighten up the kill switch and do these while it's on the boat. I'm going to actually try test fitting these two now that I have this together through that nut. I know if you watch other YouTube videos, other guys say you gotta like stack these wires up. I'm not sure why they just don't feed one wire at a time. I've never done it before, but that's why we're gonna take a peek here quick and see if it can be done. Otherwise I'll do it on the actual boat motor. Alright, so hopefully this is going to be helpful for you guys. I now see what those guys are talking about on these boat motors. I know a lot of guys are talking about shaving down these plugs with sandpaper and yada yada yada. But I'm hoping you can see this. One plug, it doesn't want to go through that nut. I don't care what you do with that thing. It is not going to go through there. So, that being said, make sure that you do the work for these once you have that kill switch back in that dashboard panel. Otherwise, you're going to be really mad at yourself. So I'm glad I checked that. So we're going to do these plug ends physically after I put that back on the boat, and we'll do these in place. So kill switch back installed through the dashboard, nuts on, got the wires here. Now another very important part you want to remember about this if you're doing the soldering route and you're just not doing butt connectors, if you have something with better insulation wires, take your heat shrink tubing, cut that before you solder, because you need to slide this on before you put those ends on. Very important. Heat shrink tubing, I took one stick this time, just cut it right in half. It's good for our application. Take each one, slide it on. I'm going to slide it up the wire a little bit so when I get things hot with the soldering iron, it doesn't decide to melt in place, and then everything that we did was for nothing, and we got to cut it all back apart. So they're on there a good ways. We shouldn't have to worry about melting them. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pre-wire both plug ends on, put flux on, and when we come back, we'll solder them. Both ends are on, fluxed. We're going to go ahead and start soldering. I am right-handed, so I'm going to try and not block your view either, but I need to be able to do this properly. I'll put a little more on that one. Oh, that one looks good. One more. This other one here, gotta push that wire up better. Okay, so I go ahead and heat this one up. So I get a little more up front here. So I think those are good. So now what we're going to do, take our shrink tubing, slide it over where we just soldered. On this one, you got some room to go up into the plug. I'm going to go all the way in there and back it off just a little bit. That way it gives this plug end a little bit of play to where it can actually move. Otherwise it makes it stiff as a rock. So same thing. We're going to use a lighter to melt these. Don't have the heat gun. Also take note, we are doing this directly above the engine and carburetor, which do have fuel. So don't get the open flame on the gasoline and start a fire in your garage. You don't want the fire department coming over a $10 kill switch. Same thing here. I'm going to slide this over. Plug can move a little bit. We're going to go ahead and shrink wrap. When I looked online, most of the tether switches come with different plug ends. So I believe the ones that go up into the magneto housing and connect to the condenser and points, you physically got to cut the ends off of them where these plugs used to go and match them to whatever new style plug there is, or cut both sets of plugs off and put your own on there. But being that this is outside in the elements, in the water, rain, you name it, I want to make sure that we got these connections as watertight as possible, barring the stock connection here. So that's really all there is to it. We fixed the old kill switch here. We can go ahead and plug it back in, and then when I go to do all my tests on this motor, we can test this kill switch later. But down the road, we'll put a new one on. Thanks for watching.